Now, on to Barbara Walters, the Hulu documentary that just premiered. It's called Tell Me Everything. It first screened at the Tribeca Film Festival. And, it's gotten a fair amount of, sort of gauzy, sort of fluffy praise. But, while I do think that Barbara Walters is an important cultural figure and did pave the way for many women, she was also a very dark figure. She was a very unhappy woman, and she really contributed two things, which I think she was a visionary in this way. She saw the mixture of hard news and entertainment news aborting in the culture long before anybody else really did. Her Barbara Walters interview specials, they were primetime specials with like major Hollywood stars, A-list stars, and they would let her into their homes, and it would be our first look at how like an Elizabeth Taylor was living or an Eddie Murphy was living. They were revelations, but her lines of questioning were often mean. And this is important because they really are a reflection of who she was and her dark energy and her self-loathing, and how in the right packaging, it was swallowed by the bulk of America as normal, I think. Now, she asked John Goodman, I pulled some of these quotes from the Hulu special. We can't air the clips. You'll have to go look for yourself if you want to see it. But she asked John Goodman, who has struggled with his weight his entire life and who became a major star on the Roseanne show, on Roseanne, and is an incredible actor. This is the question she has to ask him. Are you happy with your weight? Could you imagine asking this someone to their face? To Bette Midler, not a conventional beauty, but a force, an original in every way possible, to Bette Midler, who she says is her friend. She asks her on this interview, on camera, close up on Bette Midler. Barbara says to her, "What do you think of the way you look?" Now, Bette Midler's taken aback a little bit, and she says, I think I look great, and Barbara goes, "No kidding." And so then Bette tries to diffuse it by joking. She makes a joke. She says, hey, get out of my house. And Barbara goes, "You think you're sexy?" Not for nothing, in the beginning of this documentary, there's a lot of talk about how Barbara hated the way she looked. And her father ran a nightclub that was very famous in New York City, and there were showgirls all over the place, and he was probably cheating on her mother. That's the inference, and it's true. Come on. And, so she probably grew up in a house where her mother felt like shit and her mother made her feel like shit. And by the way, she also had a sister who had learning disabilities. And this was back when there was a lesser understanding of what those things were or how to treat them, and that they're not case by case basis. And she wrote in her memoir how she fucking resented her sister. I mean, really ugly stuff. She went on to live a life of like wealth and fame and power, and she resents her sister. Okay. She also loved dictators. She loved Fidel Castro, okay? She never really addressed all those rumors that, like, when she spent a week in Cuba with Fidel flirting on camera, that, like, maybe they got up to something. She allowed Roy Cohn, an evil man, to fix her father's tax problem. And she said, she's heard saying in this documentary, Roy Cohn did some terrible things. She didn't really care, though, because he helped her out, okay? Cindy Adams is on camera saying, listen, Barbara Walters didn't care about you unless you had fame, money, or power, unless you had something that she wanted. And this documentary also goes to great pains, especially in the beginning when they're sort of setting the table, as we call it, to say that because Barbara grew up with a father who was in the nightclub industry, like, she didn't really care about fame. Like, she was unimpressed with celebrity. And let me tell you, nothing could be further from the truth. Barbara Walters was a total star fucker. And when she was on The View, the show she created, and we'll get to that, and the idiocy she's responsible for that we suffer from to this day, she would sit and she would, like, in her fake Boston Brahmin accent, she never pronounced her ahs. It was all, that was such an affect. She was a New Yorker through and through. No New Yorker talks like that. But she would sit there and she would always brag about it. You know, like every time it was her birthday, every year, she would say this like she had never said it before. Oh, do you know who I share a birthday with? My great good friends, Michael Douglas and Catherine Zeta-Jones. You know, they're married and they have the same birthday and I have the same birthday. And so every year we go out for our birthdays together and we celebrate them because we're such good friends. And guess who's not in this documentary? Okay. Via People magazine, this is a December 31st, 2022 piece. Walters had famously interviewed Elizabeth Taylor and her sixth husband, the Senator John Warner, in 1977. Now, Liz Taylor had been through it. And she had gained a lot of weight and she was depressed. Being a senator's wife wasn't really cutting it for her. She was struggling, but she had Barbara Walters come to her home and sit with her and her husband at her kitchen table. Now, Liz was a bête noire for Barbara because not only did Liz have everything Barbara wanted, but she had dated John Warner before Liz married him. And when Liz divorced him, Barbara went back to John Warner. In this interview, again, Barbara's a guest in Elizabeth Taylor's home. Barbara is telling Elizabeth that she needs to take care of herself and she, quote, ought to eat a few more vegetables for breakfast. Okay, like the nerve. Then Barbara asked Elizabeth Taylor, who had struggled with her weight and was very open about it. This was the woman, you know, at the height of her beauty. There was nobody else on the planet. And she gained all this weight. And what a humiliation for her. She was depressed. And she was very open about her struggles. This is before confessional culture that, you know, that Oprah ushered in. So Barbara just keeps to Liz Taylor. I'm going to fucking shiv you. Does it matter to you that you've put on weight? And so Taylor is like keeping her dignity. And she says, no, it doesn't, because I'm happy. I'm happy and I enjoy eating and I like to cook. And, you know, maybe there was some truth to that. Maybe Elizabeth Taylor had had enough of dieting to within an inch of her life to be a leading lady. Okay. She'd been in the movies since the age of like 10 or 12. She probably did have it. Okay. So Barbara Walters follows up because we can't let this go. Can't let it go. She says, you wouldn't care if you got fat. And Liz Taylor says to her, I am fat. Fuck Barbara Walters. God, she was so terrible. Okay, so Barbara invents The View. She creates The View. It's this show about women of different generations. It's a morning chat show, and they all talk about the issues of the day. Now, she brings on one Sherri Shepherd, who we will get to. But the other thing about this documentary that is important, I think very salient. So Barbara Walters adopted a baby girl during one of her 3 marriages. And, you know, she would tell this story on The View all the time. Like, I adopted Jackie, you know, we were at dinner with another couple and they had a daughter and they didn't want her. And we said, we'll take her. So this is a story she's telling on the air to America about her adopted daughter, who she should just call her daughter. You're at dinner with another couple who casually says, like, they bought a car they don't like anymore, piece of furniture they don't like, we don't want her. Oh, we'll take her. I suspect that Barbara Walters had zero interest in being a mother. I think she had zero maternal instinct. And this was the thing that you do. Back then, you had a kid. You just had to have a kid if you were a woman. And so that box got checked off, and off Barbara went to secure her next big interview with, you know, Cher, whomever, while her kid is left alone. Now, Cynthia McFadden is in this documentary defending Barbara. You know, some of these celebrities, they're kind of like shivving her. They are. Like Katie Couric's there saying like, oh, you know, Barbara, yeah, loved her. You know, Barbara once said to me, like, you and I have a lot in common because, you know, neither one of us are great beauties. They put us on TV even though we're not attractive. That's like, what the fuck? I mean, I'm no fan of Katie Couric, but what kind of thing is that to say? Cynthia McFadden has the temerity to say in this documentary, this is a quote, Jackie had a governess Jackie had a governess, so it wasn't that Jackie was left alone in a playpen. Cynthia, that is not the point, that she had hired help. Now, Jackie and Barbara would also talk about this always on The View. And it was very gratifying to hear Barbara then try to be like, every time summer was coming up and all the ladies of The View would be talking about their summer plans, they would turn to Barbara. Barbara, what's your plan? Are you going to see your daughter? And Barbara would always be like, you know, Jackie's very busy. She runs a camp for youth in, I think, youth in crisis. We'll see why. I could be wrong, but I think she runs a camp and she's really busy. And so, you know, if she has the time, like we will visit, of course, but I don't want to interrupt her. And it was so clear. Take notes, Meghan Markle. It was so clear that this girl, this adult daughter of Barbara Walters, wanted nothing to do with her. Nothing. Okay. Now, she gave an interview years ago, and it's in this documentary. Her daughter, no surprise, because she's clearly been neglected by an adoptive mother who tells that origin story to anyone who will listen, and is too busy chasing celebrities around the globe to pay attention to her only child. Jackie develops some behavioral issues. Jackie develops some drug and alcohol issues. Jackie's running away from home. Of course, any place is better. So Barbara gives an interview about somebody having to go find Jackie and get her. And then Barbara sends her to what Barbara calls a, quote, emotional growth school. And she's packed away there for 3 years. Jackie was 16. And, you know, thanks to Paris Hilton and others who have talked about their time at these kind of rehabilitative schools for troubled youth, we know what goes on there. I'm not saying that that was what Jackie suffered, but I'm just saying. Now, Barbara Walters also was asked about her daughter's drug issues, and Barbara spoke about them. And I'm sorry, that's not your story to tell. But here's Barbara with the close-up and the tears in the eyes saying, almost any pill she could swallow. Feel sorry for me, the mother who has to abide this, to suffer this. My daughter's a drug addict. It's what a shame. Fuck you. And Jackie, by the way, is not part of this documentary. She never asked for any of this. And I think it's disgusting that this part of the story is in the documentary. I really, really, really do. Oprah's in this documentary, and she tries to paint Barbara's neglect as a mother. I'm going to say this neglect is adjacent to abuse, because if your kid is running away at that age and spending time with strange men and ingesting drugs and alcohol to kill the pain, you failed. Okay, you fucking failed. Now, Oprah tries to paint this as selfless, and she says on her throne in this documentary, you are a pioneer in your field of Barbara. She's probably talking about herself too, but whatever. You are a pioneer in your field, and you are trying to break the mold for yourself and for women who are going to follow you. I promise you, Barbara Walters was not thinking at all about the women who are going to follow her. And I have my own little story about Barbara Walters. Years ago, when I was at the New York Post, I was doing a profile of one of her lesser contributors at that table on The View. A lesser mind. And that's saying something, because it's not a brain trust. And of course, I called Barbara for a comment, because this really is promotion. Even if it's a negative story, which it was, it's still promotion for The View. People hate watch The View. So I had this appointed time set up by her assistant at ABC to call in. And then the assistant was going to patch me into Barbara. And Barbara knew that this reporter at this outlet is calling for a quote on this person. It takes 2 minutes tops. Okay, I get patched in to Barbara, and I show proper respect. I almost never called people Ms. or Mr. I would just call them by their first names. But in this case, I said, when she picked up, I said, hi, Ms. Walters, this is more, and she cut me off and she goes, yeah, what do you want? She was cogent at the time. I didn't have anything to offer her. So, you know, that's how she talked to people who didn't have anything to offer her. And, you know, as far as, again, that mothering, you know, we've got Charles Manson to interview. We've got the Menendez brothers to interview. Jackie will just be fine at her home for emotionally troubled people, because we're off talking to the likes of Charles fucking Manson and the Menendez brothers. Physician, heal thyself. Now, this kind of race to the bottom of what we call infotainment, we can lay a lot of the blame at Barbara's feet. Okay. There are no real friends in this documentary because she didn't really have any friends. There were no people who seemed to really know her intimately and could speak to her sorrows and her joys, or she didn't really have anyone. And these people are so valuable who could contradict her, who could speak freely to her. You know, she would have been better off for it. She would have been less lonely. But instead, in her never-ending quest for fame and for power, and as we have said on The View, as one person once said, I believe it was a Washington, D.C. poll, the most dangerous place on earth is between Barbara Walters and a television camera. We come to The View, and we come to the Sherri Shepherd era. Now we're still feeling the sort of aftershocks from the Whoopi earthquake of, you know, Black people in America have it worse than women in Iran. Okay. And she's still at that table, but, you know, Sherri Shepherd walked so Whoopi could run. Now, Sherri may have been Barbara Walters' all-time greatest misfire. Here, we're going to take a quick look at Sherri cheerfully relaying why ABC Brass didn't want to hire her, and Barbara saying, no, I think she'd be great.
First of all, Barbara had to fight to get me on the show alongside Whoopi. The network didn't want me because at that time, they thought that, you know, all African Americans were monolithic in their thinking.
Sherri, I don't think that was the reason. I don't think that was the reason. I think they knew you were a moron. I think they knew that if they took an EKG of your brain activity, it would be. So I'm going to quote, I'll do the dialogue. I'm an actress now, so I can play multiple roles. This has largely been scrubbed from the internet, but you can't scrub everything. I mean, you know, nothing disappears forever. So I did find the clip. We can't air it, sadly, for rights and clearances reasons, but I'm going to do a reading. Now, this is a conversation. I don't know how evolution came up at this table, but evolution came up. And Sherri couldn't figure it out. Okay, Whoopi. So you don't believe that evolution happened? Sherri, no. Whoopi. Is the world flat? Sherri, is the world flat? Whoopi, yes. Sherri, I don't know. I mean, you have to laugh. But these are the people that Barbara Walters and ABC News thought were at the level to beam into the homes of American women and any other bystanders who happen to be watching at 11 a.m. Eastern to talk about the issues, to have an intelligent discourse worthy of the audience. So that was in 2007. And also in that same year, Sherri was a big Bible thumper back then, and the contradictions are amazing. She said that the ancient Greeks had persecuted the Christians, even though Christ was not born at the time of ancient Greece. And in that vein, when we going back now to the conversation about whether the earth is flat, Whoopi attempts to be Socratic, if you will, in getting Sherri to the realization that the earth is indeed round. Whoopi says, what do you think? Sherri, I never thought about it, Whoopi. Is the world flat? I never thought about it. Barbara comes in, but you never thought about, and I'm going to stop the dialogue right here because it's learned. It's not thought about whether the earth is round or flat. It's like, did you go to school? Are you literate? Have you seen a photo of the earth taken by NASA astronauts from outer space? Do you understand that? Have you seen a movie that the earth is round? No, they're using this euphemism, thought about. No, it's a fact. Barbara, whether the world was round or flat. Sherri, no, because, and she's buying time here. She's buying time because she doesn't fucking know. I'll tell you what I have thought about, Sherri says. I've thought about how I'm going to feed my child. Okay, let's talk about the child because Sherri gave an interview around that same time saying that she believed, that she knew, unlike whether the earth is flat or round, but she knew for sure that gay people are going to hell because that's what her Christian religion teaches her. Okay, 1 year later, she told a Christian magazine called Precious Times, I've had more abortions than I can count. So she's a big Christian who wants us to believe she's smart enough to be on The View, even though she doesn't know about evolution and the shape of the earth that she lives on, and that gays are going to go to hell. But it's cool that she's had multiple abortions that she has used as birth control. I mean, again, if I'm running ABC News, I'm just firing her for cause. She's too stupid. Too stupid. Okay, this is the other thing that I couldn't believe, her struggling, her inability. I mean, she probably believes humans roamed the earth at the same time as dinosaurs. I mean, this is a kind of stupidity. Again, we can blame Barbara Walters. You want to talk about the Hodas of the world, the Maria Shrivers of the world, Jenna Bush Hagers of the world, the Oprahs of the world? Blame Barbara for this.